back, everybody, to another episode of Sound Family Dwelling. My name is Chris Angel, your co-host, here with your host, Mark Jacobson.
Hey, Chris. Hello again.
Hello again. Yes, we're back with part 2 of frequently asked questions. And I think this is really important because there's so much lingo in real estate. People are like, today we're talking about earnest money. We're like, what's earnest money?
Yeah.
So let's dive in.
Okay. So earnest money. I get asked about earnest money a lot. So what is earnest money exactly?
Yeah.
Well, earnest money is basically a good faith deposit towards the purchase of your home. It's an advance, if you will, on your down payment or your costs to close.
Got it.
It's something that you submit at the time of your offer is accepted, generally speaking anyway, and it sits in an escrow account until the closing of your purchase.
Yeah.
At which time it goes towards your funds required to close your purchase. This is not an extra amount of money you have to pay.
Right.
I get that asked to me a lot as well. It's not extra. So if you're buying a house for $500,000 and your earnest money is $25,000, you're not paying $525,000 to your house. You're paying $500,000. You just have to come up with another $475,000.
And it actually just gets credited to what you would have had to bring for your down payment and your closing costs at closing. Right?
That's exactly right. It's a great way to put it. It gets credited.
Yeah. Important to note, probably, like when that gets deposited in escrow, it actually pulls from your account. Like I think some people think, oh, well, the check just sits in a folder somewhere and it doesn't actually get deposited.
Yeah. No, that money comes right out. So when you make an offer on a house, and again, we went over this in episode 1.
Yeah.
So go back and look at that episode, and I'll email it to you if you want me to. Just contact me at soundfamilydwelling@gmail.com.
Yeah.
But when you make an offer on a house and that offer is accepted, your earnest money is pretty much due right away, within a day or two, technically. So if your earnest money is $10,000, you need to have a check ready to go for $10,000, and most of the time it gets deposited at the escrow company. But in any case, it sits in a third-party account until the transaction's done.
Got it.
But and that comes right out of your account.
Yeah.
So it has to be ready to go.
Got it.
So people get kind of nervous about that, right? And they say, well, is that money gone for good then? What if something happens and I lose my job or lose my financing for whatever reason, or maybe I find a major problem with the house during the inspection?
Right.
Do I get my earnest money back? Well, the short answer is yes, you do. In your contract, you should have a financing contingency that says your earnest money is refunded to you if you lose your financing for whatever reason.
Right.
If it's maybe the appraisal's low, and meaning what that means is the appraisal came back lower than what you want to purchase the home for, and your lender is not going to, give you all the loan based on your purchase price. They're just going to do it based on the appraised amount.
Got it. Right.
So anyway, your financing contingency protects you in rare circumstances where there's a longer transaction. Most transactions are 30 to 40 days or 20 sometimes in a hot market.
Yeah.
But in a situation where it's a longer close, maybe 60 days or something like that. I had a deal actually just this spring that was just like that, where the buyer and the seller actually agreed they both needed about 65 days to close the deal. So just a normal straight up house purchase, but due to the seller's needs to move out and they're moving out of state, and the buyer's needs to sell their own home, etc., they agreed on a longer close. Well, in situations like that, you can get to a point where that financing contingency gets waived, but that's really rare. And so you should just be aware of that there is a point where the financing contingency can be waived prior to closing.
Yeah. But
again, that's really rare, and in a situation like that, you're going to be very aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time, your financing contingency is going to protect you and your earnest money in the event you lose your financing.
Right.
Likewise, during the inspection you find a major issue with the house, foundation or just
Mold.
major mold or whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Right.
and you decide that you do not want to go through with the purchase during your inspection contingency period, you can then rescind your contract and get your earnest money back at that point as well. And in general, your other contingencies that you may have will protect you and your earnest money.
This is the part where I feel like it's really important that people have an experienced agent on their side, because as an agent, I remember like we would put in contingencies on purpose to protect the earnest money. Like it was always about finding ways to create loopholes and protect our buyers and their best interests. And if you don't have somebody who knows what they're doing, then you can oftentimes miss that advice or that counsel, and you could lose your earnest money.
That's right.
If they don't know what they're doing with addendums, right? The
That's
addenda
right.
is there to protect you.
That's right. And along with that, I'm glad you brought that up, because along with that, understanding the time frames involved. Again, we go back to what we call a computation of time that we went over in episode 1. Understanding your deadlines on meeting your obligations of each contingency is very important in that regard.
Yeah, if you miss the deadline, you can't go back and say, hey, well, listen, that thing in the inspection report, like I don't want my earnest money back. Well, you missed that window, and the seller, if the seller's agent was doing their job, they'd be like, you missed that window, you're not getting your earnest money. We're keeping your earnest money.
That's right.
Oops.
So make sure you are dialed in with that, and that you're meeting your obligations with each contingency for sure.
Yeah, big time.
So all this talk about earnest money and when it's deposited, what it is. Some people still want to know, well, what's really the purpose of earnest money? It seems kind of silly. I'm going to buy the house.
Right.
What's the big deal? Well, when you get a property under contract, you're essentially taking that property off the market. And so the seller can no longer take other offers on the home, and so is really at your mercy to close the transaction. So the earnest money is your way of saying that you are serious about buying their property, and it also gives the seller some assurance, and is also a way of compensating the seller in the event you default on the contract. In other words, if you decide after all your contingencies are done that you do not want to purchase the house after all, then you're in default on the contract, and the seller keeps the earnest money as compensation for losing all that market time they had to sell it to someone else.
Right. Yeah.
So,
like cold feet. Like, don't get cold feet.
Right.
After all your contingencies are satisfied.
Right. Yeah. And I've had that happen. I mean, I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times or more, maybe, in my career, and people ended up losing their earnest money.
Yeah.
So
well, as long as you know that. That's the consequence of getting cold feet. Then that's your time.
You definitely have to go into the deal knowing that can happen, and so be serious about what you're doing, and keep yourself in communication with your agent, with your broker, and make sure that you're following those time frames. Again, understanding the computation of time.
I like the way you said it, Mark. Like the thought on it actually takes the seller's house off the market because they can't entertain other offers. That's actually, as the buyer, your advantage. Like you're actually, like, by putting your earnest money down, you're actually stopping all offers and protecting this 30 to 45 day window to figure out, is this what we really want? I mean, it's your advantage as a buyer to have that. So you want to make that really attractive. Yeah.
So, and we went over that in episode 1. In regard to how earnest money relates to the contract and to the purchase price.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the stronger the earnest money, in other words, the higher the amount, the better, as far as making the seller feel comfortable taking your offer.
Yeah.
We usually see, 2 to 3% earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
It can be as low as 1%. If there's other compensating factors in the contract, like, we're going to close in 2 weeks rather than 40 days, for example, you can get by with a lower amount of earnest money.
Right.
But generally speaking, you want to count on about 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah.
Okay. Of the purchase price, that is.
I like it.
So anyway, if anybody has any questions about that, so just send me an email to soundfamilydwelling@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I'll also be happy to email you these FAQs, these frequently asked real estate questions. There are a few more that we are not going to be covering here in episodes 5 and 6 that we are doing in parts 1 and 2 of the FAQs. So anyway,
yeah,
I look forward to hearing from anybody.
Yeah, it's such good stuff, man. These are the nuances of real estate that I think are so important that just they don't get covered in. There's no like book that says, hey, like let me read the book on that. So this is super helpful just to kind of bring it to the masses. So thank you. Thanks again for another great episode.
All right. Thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.